A construction project is just like an Olympic relay. I had read a story where the U.S. men's Olympic relay team was described as having four of the fastest humans on Earth, but they flopped. And the reason they failed miserably in the 4x100 meter relay is they fumbled the handoff. And it's the same way with a construction project. You could have the most talented individuals, you could have the best projects, but if you fumble the handoff of information from one stage to the next, that's where most of the problems come from. There's a deficiency that's plaguing most construction businesses, especially custom home builders, spec home builders, remodeling contractors, and general contractors, but also specialty trade contractors. And there's a trap that 90% of them are stuck in, and it's the root cause of most of their problems. That's what we're going to talk about in this episode. Hey, if this is your first time joining, this is the Construction Leading Edge podcast. My name is Todd Dawalt, and you can learn more about us over at constructionleadingedge.com. But we're all about helping construction business owners systematize their business so you can have more freedom, more impact, and more wealth. So let's get into it. Back in the early 1900s, there was a guy named Robert Falcon Scott, and he was a polar explorer trying to make it to the South Pole. He made an attempt at the South Pole. Once he and most of his team were plagued by this mysterious disease that almost killed them, made them turn back. He went back and retooled, talked to some of the smartest medical doctors and scientists of the time, and they figured out it must be because of the cold. That's what almost killed them. It could have been something in their blood, the presence of something in their blood. So they figured it out, they revamped, they retooled, they made another run at the South Pole, and it didn't go well. Robert Falcon Scott was found dead in a tent 8 months later, and he had written in his journal, it was laying there kind of cryptically beside him, and it said, "I don't think we can go much further." And that was the last thing he wrote, and he was found dead. So what happened? What was this mysterious disease? Well, it wasn't the presence of something. It wasn't the cold. What this mysterious disease was a deficiency. And unfortunately for him, it was a deficiency that had been cured and figured out hundreds of years before. And it was a simple vitamin C deficiency. It was scurvy. What killed him and his team and what scuttled his efforts to get to the South Pole was something that had been solved hundreds of years before by sailors. That's why if you drink gin and tonic, you can thank the sailors. That's why they drank gin and tonic, was to get their quinine and their lime juice to solve scurvy. So there's a deficiency that a lot of construction businesses are dealing with, and it's pretty simple to solve, but it causes some pretty painful symptoms. So I'll run through some of these symptoms of this deficiency and see which ones resonate with you. If more than one or two of these resonate with you, you could be dealing with this deficiency. So we'll talk about this deficiency and how to solve it. Here are some of the symptoms of that deficiency. And it's a deficiency of a specific phase of a construction project that's probably missing. You're stuck in firefighting mode and you're stuck in day-to-day operations. If you're the business owner, you're just constantly in firefighting mode. Your phone rings constantly. While you're listening to this podcast, you may get 20 or 30 notifications. You could get 100 to 200 notifications a day. Phone calls, emails, text messages from clients, trade partners, people in your team. You just get bombarded by inbound messages. Your project managers and superintendents and crew leaders are stressed, always feel behind and overwhelmed. They don't have time. They may say things like, "We need more time management." You may think your people in the field are just lousy at time management. That's one of the symptoms. You and your team are spending way too much time in reactive mode, reacting, playing defense to problems that pop up on your job sites. There are schedule overruns. Your projects are just taking way too long. You may have this urge to quit. You may be thinking, maybe it's time to brush up on the old resume and go back to work for somebody else where I can at least have a normal day-to-day schedule and actually get paid what I'm worth. There are profit bleeds typically. Profit bleeds like giveaways, schedule overruns, lost productivity, and rework. Rework, schedule overruns, giveaways, lost productivity. And there's, in many cases, opportunity cost A lot of money is being left on the table. One of the side effects or the symptoms is that maybe because of all of these issues, you're reluctant to grow. You're reluctant to hire people. You're reluctant to take on bigger projects. You feel like you've hit this wall. Maybe you feel like you've hit this ceiling of complexity. You don't have time to work on your business because you're so busy working in it, doing all of these other things we've already talked about, answering hundreds of inbound messages, constant firefighting, constant reactive mode. You just don't have time. And when it comes to time, you are very likely working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And there are lots of other ripple effects from that. And it's very likely that your customers are, maybe when you get to the end of a project, you have customers who are like, meh, it was okay. Meh, the end result was good, but it was kind of a shit show to get there. Meh, I wouldn't work with these guys again. Maybe you don't get repeat business. Those are all symptoms of that deficiency. So if any of that sounds familiar, you may be wondering, all right, what is this deficiency? Is it the skilled labor deficiency? Is it a technology deficiency? No. What's missing, if you're dealing with this is based on working my 25 plus years of experience working with billion-dollar companies all the way down to very small one-person operations doing everything from high-rises to bathroom remodels. What's missing is there is a pre-construction deficiency. All of those symptoms can be traced back to a deficiency in pre-construction. Okay? So here's what this looks like. Here's the old way of doing it. All right? To the most basic level, a construction business exists to convert contracts into profit, right? At the most basic level, that's what it does. It's what it should do. And here's the old way of doing that. Here's the old way of attempting to convert contracts into profit, all right? Some combination of doing free estimates, plugging in allowances in contracts, using plug numbers, just guessing at what something is going to cost, gambling during the bidding phase. There's a lot of, hey, let's get started and we'll figure out the rest later, right? We'll figure it out later. We'll figure it out when we get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, right? A lot of that. A lot of wait and see. Starting projects with incomplete specifications, with missing selections, maybe even incomplete design. Fast tracking projects. This is a trap that I found myself stuck in a lot. We're going to fast track this project and we're going to break it up into phases and we're going to fast track this thing. That is a trap. There are often scope gaps. You get into a project and realize, oh, we didn't buy out the pavers. We didn't plug in a number for the low voltage system, or we forgot this scope of work. So we have these gaps in the scope. These are all symptoms of that trap. At the beginning, I mentioned there's a trap that 90% of construction businesses are stuck in. They don't even realize it. It's like their foot is trapped. It's locked in a bear trap. They can't see it. They can feel it, but they don't know what it is, but they can't get out of it. And it's the just enough to start trap. We call it the JETS trap, doing just enough to start. Okay? We're going to do just enough work to put together an estimate. If it has to be free, we really can't afford to spend much time on it, so we can only afford to do just enough to get this estimate out the door. And then do just enough to get a contract signed, including allowances and plug numbers and missing selections. Let's do just enough to get a crew started. Let's do just enough to mobilize. Let's do just enough to get a trade partner out there. And sometimes that just enough is saying, hey, electrician, send your crew out there. I've heard this. This is crazy to me, but a custom home builder saying, hey, just send your crew out there and then we'll meet them on site and we'll tell them what we want them to do. No plans, no anything. That is classic just enough to start. Doing just enough to get to the next step and then telling yourself, we'll figure out the rest later. And that sets off a domino effect of chaos, right? So I'm curious, How, when you think about this just enough to start trap, how is it affecting your team? What is the just enough to start trap doing to you and your team? Is it showing up at all? Maybe you have things locked down, but maybe not. So curious, how is that showing up for you? What's the number one way that this just enough to start trap is affecting you? And if it is affecting you, you're not alone. Unfortunately, it affects 90% of the construction businesses out there, and it's human nature. We're lazy. We only want to do just enough to get to the next step. And this not only happens with construction on the construction side, but I've also seen this on the design side. I've seen this in lease transactions where, specific example, the developer I was working for, we were working on a $30 million office building for a Fortune 500 company, and they did just enough to start every step along the way. Put out an RFP for the project with just enough. We need a 100,000 square foot office building. That was it. Of course, that turned out to be wrong, and it ended up being a 140,000 square foot office building. And we figured that out about 80% of the way through the design process. And that set off a domino effect of chaos that we never recovered from. The entire project, 18 months, 24 months, was chaos. And every time I've tried to fast track a project, it's been the same way. And it's, let's do just enough to start. And that's a trap that you want to stay out of. Okay. So what's the new way? What's the new way? How do you stay out of the just enough to start trap? How do you solve this deficiency? Well, the new way is what we call nailing the handoff. Okay. What I found is that a construction project is just like an Olympic relay. All right. And back in, I think, one of the recent Summer Olympics, I had read a story where the U.S. men's Olympic relay team was described as having 4 of the fastest humans on Earth, but they flopped. And the reason they failed miserably in the 4x100 meter relay is they fumbled the handoff. And it's the same way with a construction project. You could have the most talented individuals, you could have the best projects, but if you fumble the handoff of information from one stage to the next, that's where most of the problems come from. And specifically, the handoff from pre-construction to construction is where most of the problems live. The handoff from the office to the field, from estimating to operations. But the handoff from the office to the field is where most of the problems live, and that's where we can avoid them. So here's what the new way looks like, okay? So imagine if you looked at a typical, like a very basic, typical Gantt chart schedule, and there's a pre-construction line. Typically, there's an overlap between pre-construction and construction, and that's where the chaos lives. Chaos lives in the overlap between pre-construction and construction activities, right? When you're doing what should be pre-construction activities during construction. And think about the word pre-construction. It means it should be done pre or before construction starts. So that's a key mindset shift, is that you're going to have a distinct pre-construction phase, okay? And number 2 is someone is going to be accountable for that pre-construction phase. One person is going to be accountable for pre-construction. Number 3, all pre-construction activities, whatever is determined to be a pre-construction activity, will be done before construction starts, meaning pre-construction activities will truly be pre-construction activities. Okay, so number 1, you're going to have a well-defined pre-construction phase. Number 2, somebody's accountable for that pre-construction phase. Number 3, all pre-construction activities are done before construction starts. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next, you have a documented pre-construction process. Okay, it's documented pre-construction process. So pre-construction phase, number 1. Number 2, somebody's accountable for it. Number 3, all pre-construction activities are done before construction starts. Number 4, it's documented. Number 5, there is a handoff. There's a handoff meeting. We actually we actually use a baton. We have a handoff baton. And we encourage our clients, all of our clients get one of these batons and they use them at their handoff meeting. And there is a physical handoff of information and accountability from pre-construction to construction. Okay. And when this is done properly, the field team, the recipient of the baton, it has everything they need to finish the job instead of just enough to start. And there's a couple of caveats. If you're doing mega projects, you might be thinking, well, that's impossible. We can't hand off everything on a $10 million project before we start construction. It's a fair point. You may have multiple handoffs. You may have a site work handoff. You may have a structural handoff for the core and shell of the building. You may have an MEP, FP handoff for all the mechanical, plumbing, fire protection, electrical systems. But the key is that there's a certain point at which your field team needs everything to finish instead of just enough to start. And here's the secret sauce of this. Some of you may be thinking, that's fantastic. I'm going to go into my cave. I'm going to flip open my laptop and I'm going to start hammering away and I'm going to type out the pre-construction process and I'm going to insert it into a small tube and I'm going to cram it down the throats of my people, right? That's probably what you're thinking. That is not going to work, all right? Resist the urge to go create this process in a vacuum and then try to cram it down the throats of your people. It will not work. You're fighting a lot of human psychology if you try that. So the secret sauce of developing your pre-construction process, of developing your nail the handoff process is this statement. It's about the who, not the how. Okay? The secret sauce to developing a nail the handoff process that works is the who, not the how. Okay? This process has to be developed in a way that the team who will be implementing it is part of developing it. All right. So there's this psychological concept that I learned about called psychological reactance. Psychological reactance, which means we as humans tend to do the opposite of what we're told to do. When we feel like options are being taken away from us, we react negatively to that. So this is why those processes that you've created in your fortress of solitude and chiseled on stones and come down from the mountain and handed to your team, this is why they don't follow them. No matter how perfect your processes are, this is why they don't follow them. Psychological reactance, because you did it and you're trying to force your process onto them. So if you want this to work, if you want your team to actually implement a process, develop the process with them. That is the secret sauce to our nail the handoff process. Is you have to develop this process with your team so that it's their process. Okay. You may have experienced this, that there are some people on your team who have a finely tuned sense of smell. They can sniff out every reason why your ideas won't work, why your process, why your system won't work. Right? Do you have one of those bloodhounds on your team where they can find every reason, and they're very vocal about it in some cases. They'll tell you why things won't work, right? Well, when somebody is part of developing a process, when it's their plan, they will run through walls to implement their plan. But when you try to cram something down their throat, they'll find every reason why it won't work, okay? So it took me about 15 years to figure this out, all right? 15 years of trying it the other way. Here's the process. I'm going to cram it down your throat and I'm going to have to enforce it and I'm going to have to drive implementation and it's going to feel like I'm pushing ropes uphill. If that's what you feel like, then you need to try a different approach to developing your processes and involve your team in this. It's going to make your life much easier. They're going to implement it much better. Okay. So here's a couple of practical tips as you think about putting together your pre-construction process to nail the handoff. All right. Number one, create the process with your team. Resist the urge to go hammer something out and roll it out to your team. It's not going to work. Okay. That's why every SOP, system process policy you've created, that hasn't been followed. That's why it's not working, because of the approach, because you neglected the who and focused on the how. Number 2, document your process. Document it. Put it in a document. That way it's available as a reference guide, a training manual, and everybody's singing from the same sheet of music. Number 3, if you're using project management software like Buildertrend, CoConstruct, JobTread, Microsoft Project, anything with a scheduling component, create a pre-construction schedule template in your software and let your software do the remembering and the reminding of what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. So what this looks like is you create a pre-construction schedule template with all of the steps in your pre-construction process, and it's a generic template. And then every time you have a new project that comes along, you just make a copy of that pre-construction template and you go in and modify it, assign tasks, put dates and durations in there, and let it do the remembering and the reminding for you. That's a great way to automate your pre-construction process. Number 4 is divide up pre-construction from construction. You have to separate pre-construction and construction in your mind. That means from an accountability standpoint, different people need to be responsible. One person needs to be responsible for pre-construction. A different person needs to be responsible or accountable for construction. Create that separation of duties. Create that separation in your schedules as well. Your schedule should break out pre-construction from construction. And then consider breaking it out financially as well. Pre-construction can, in many cases, and should, in some cases, be a separate agreement, a separate contract. You should be paid separately. It should be a separate phase. It should be a separate part of the project, and you should get paid for it. If you are a custom home builder, a remodeling contractor, if you're doing small commercial general contracting processes, you need to get paid for pre-construction. It's incredibly valuable for your client to do so. It's incredibly valuable for you to get paid a premium. I'm not talking about, we charge $100 for a site visit. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not going to fund your efforts to nail the handoff. So we've got an entire Get Paid for Estimates masterclass. If you are currently doing free estimates, you got to stop. Okay. It's in everybody's best interest for you to get paid a premium for pre-construction and estimating work. And you can get that entire Get Paid for Estimates masterclass over at constructionleadingedge.com/start, START. So if you're currently doing free estimates and you want to stop and you want to get paid for estimates, go over to constructionleadingedge.com/start. You'll get our entire masterclass for free, no strings attached. It's the same system that hundreds of people have used to, in fact, get paid for estimates. So let's talk about some side effects. This is what we've heard from our clients after they've started to nail the handoff. They've spent the time to solve this deficiency and create a pre-construction process to document it, implement it the right way with their team. Here are some of the side effects that we've heard. Number 1, this is interesting to me. I've heard it from a lot of people. Their phone calls go down. Very simply, their phone stops ringing. I was on a call with one of our clients named Max, and he showed me his phone. He said, Todd, look at this. He showed me his recent calls. He said, yesterday I got 8 phone calls total, and 7 of them were people telling me happy birthday. I got 1 work-related phone call. Alex Thompson was actually on the podcast a while back, and he mentioned that he gets 10% of the phone calls that he used to, and he doesn't get any phone calls after hours now after doing this. And I consistently hear from people, my phone doesn't ring now. Jake Lewandall, who was on the podcast maybe a year or so ago, talked about how he doesn't get phone calls anymore. And think about it. Why are you getting so many phone calls? Is it because you're giving your team just enough to start? And if so, where do they have to go to get those answers? They probably have to call you. So when you solve that and you give them everything they need to finish, then they don't have to make phone calls, right? So side effect number 1 is phone calls to you go way down. The next side effect is implementation by the team goes way up. We hear consistently over and over that we hear things like, now my team is taking ownership, they're solving problems on their own, mistakes are going down, and people are bought in to this. And they're implementing this process. And when the team is more efficient and they have everything they need to finish, schedule dates are getting hit. Schedule milestones are getting hit. Projects are getting delivered on time. Change orders go down. If you think about the chaos you're dealing with when it relates to change orders, why is that? Is it because maybe you're doing just enough to start, and then when you have to figure stuff out later, there's a financial side effect that has to be solved? Well, when you figure out all of the pre-construction activities first, you eliminate a lot of change orders. And think about this, when you are delivering projects faster, change orders are being reduced, the customer experience goes up. Customers can actually enjoy the build process instead of being bombarded by questions. So customer experience naturally goes up. And when your customer experience goes up, what does that do to referrals and negotiated work and repeat business? All good things. Also, we found that by having a documented pre-construction process and getting paid a premium for it, in those cases, you actually differentiate yourself from the competition. Most of your competitors are probably kind of winging it, flying by the seat of their pants, figuring it out as they go. And that doesn't excite some clients. Think about if you want to work with high net worth individuals, someone who's going to build a $5 million home, or they're a business owner and they want to build a $10 million building for their business. They have done certain things to achieve that level of success, and they like to know what's going on. They expect a good experience. They expect an organized experience. They don't expect and they don't like chaos. So when you can show them, look, this is our documented pre-construction process. This is how we do it. And this is why we're doing this. They appreciate that. And that differentiates you from the competition. And another interesting side effect, there are lots of them, but the last one I'll point out is you can actually do more work with less people. You can actually accomplish more work with less people. You may be thinking right now, well, I have to hire another project manager. I need 2 more superintendents to keep up with things. Well, think about this. Right now, if your superintendent is getting just enough to start, then if you think about they're looking at each project as a dashboard on a truck. And right now, their dashboard has 25 different gauges that they have to keep up with, right? They have to keep up with the basics like schedule, daily logs, coordinating subcontractors, ordering materials, some things that superintendents should be doing to execute work in the field. But if they're getting just enough to start, then they're also having to extract decisions from the customer. They're having to get selections and track selections. They're having to track the budget when allowances change because selections are made. They're having to track changes, this avalanche of changes, customer interaction. They're managing so much. They have 25 gauges on their dashboard that they're trying to keep up with. Well, when you have a good pre-construction process and you take all of those pre-construction activities off their dashboard, no longer are they having to get selections from clients. No longer are they having to go source subcontractors. No longer are they having to issue purchase orders or negotiate pricing, manage the budget, or manage the constant flow of information with the client. When all they have to do is build the project, you've reduced their dashboard from 25 gauges down to maybe 10 gauges. And it's much more manageable. So that means your field teams can manage more work in less time because you've eliminated that just enough to start trap, and they have everything they need to finish. And all they have to do is build. Okay. So a few questions for you to ponder now. Think about this. How much more time would you personally have if you had a good pre-construction process in place and you could nail the handoff? Think about it. If when you started a project, your team had everything they need to finish, there was a handoff of the information and accountability and communication from one phase to the next, How much more time would you have if you could do that? What would that do to the number of phone calls that you receive on a weekly basis? How much time would that free up for you personally? The second question is, what would it do for your team? What would be the ripple effects on your team to have a solid pre-construction process in place? What would it do to their stress level? What would it do to their experience working for you? What would it do to their likelihood of sticking around and working for you long term? But think about it. What would it do for your team to have a solid pre-construction process in place? And then the third question, which is different for everybody, I'd be curious how you would think about this. What would be the financial upside to your business for dialing in your pre-construction process? How would you think about the financial upside to dialing in your pre-construction process? Would your projects be more profitable potentially? Would you be able to do more work? Would you be able to get more repeat business? Would you be able to negotiate more work? But how would you think about this? What's the financial upside, say, over the next 12 months to dialing in your pre-construction process? A few questions for you to think about. So to recap, there's a deficiency, and the deficiency is in the pre-construction phase. There's a pre-construction deficiency. The new way is to nail the handoff. Okay. So a couple of practical tips, again, I would challenge you to do is create the process with your team, create your pre-construction process with your team, document that process somewhere, create a pre-construction schedule template in your software, and then begin to divide up pre-construction from construction, from an accountability standpoint, from a scheduling standpoint, from a contracting standpoint, and from a financial standpoint. And then if you're currently doing free estimates and you want to end the practice of free estimates, go sign up for our Get Paid for Estimates Masterclass. It's free. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/start, START. So here's the deal. If you are experiencing some of those symptoms and you want to, if you're like, yes, we need to nail the handoff, we are dealing with a pre-construction deficiency, you really have three options. All right. Boils down to three options. And these are the same three options if you want to make any meaningful change in your life. Number one is do nothing. Option one is do nothing. Keep doing the same thing, keep on keeping on, same inputs, same results, month after month, year after year. Option number one. And that may be the right choice for you. Option number two is to DIY, to do it yourself. Figure it out on your own, trial and error, reinvent the wheel, go read books, listen to more podcasts, DIY, do it yourself. Option number three is to find a proven system, right? So sort of like if you currently use software for anything like QuickBooks or Buildertrend or some project management software, I'm guessing you didn't try to write that code yourself. You found a proven system that delivered the result you wanted, and you signed up for it and you invested in that. So if you're looking for a proven system to dial in your pre-construction process, we've helped hundreds of construction business owners install our unique nail the handoff process, our nail the handoff pre-construction process in their business. If you're wondering who this works for, it works fantastically well for custom home builders, spec home builders, remodeling contractors, commercial GCs. It also works. We've had clients who are electricians who've had fantastic results, concrete contractors, site and utility contractors, plumbing, companies ranging from $1 million in annual revenue up to $30 to $50 million in annual revenue. It really doesn't matter what kind of sticks and bricks you're putting together or how large or small your business is. The Nail the Handoff framework works for all of those. And it's part of our Systematize Your Construction Business program. So if you'd like to see what systematizing your business looks like, see what nailing the handoff looks like and what the positive side effects are that come with that, the next step would be to go schedule a free business evaluation call with my team by going to constructionleadingedge.com/apply. APPLY, or you can simply go to constructionleadingedge.com and click the Apply Now button. And when we get on that business evaluation call, you'll learn about the 5-step process that's part of our Systematize Your Construction Business. But most importantly, you'll get an objective third-party evaluation of your business to answer one big question. That big question is your business designed to fail, or is it designed to succeed? Right? The reality is a lot of construction businesses fail every year. And the reason is they're designed to fail unintentionally. So let me ask you this. If your business is designed to fail, when would you rather find out? Now, while there's still some time to do something about it, or when it's too late? So the business evaluation call is free. There are no strings attached. And this could be the best hour you've spent working on your business in a long time. So our schedule fills up pretty quickly. So if you'd like to book your free business evaluation call, head on over to constructionleadingedge.com and click the Apply Now button, or you can go straight to constructionleadingedge.com/APPLY. Thanks for listening to the podcast. My name is Todd Dawalt from Construction Leading Edge. I hope this helps you. And again, I challenge you to take some action. So here's what I would challenge you. What's your 5-minute action item? What's something you can do in the next 5 minutes to take action on this? If you're dealing with a pre-construction deficiency, what's your 5-minute action item? And I would challenge you to take action on that. So I hope this helps. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.